Hey, language lovers. Ready to unlock some serious word power.
Yeah.
Today we're diving deep into 4 expressions that'll make you sound, well, smarter and give you a glimpse into the history of, like, everyday English.
I think what's so cool about these expressions is that they tell us a lot about culture and how, we've been communicating over time.
Okay, first up is ebullient. Even saying it, it feels kind of bubbly, exciting, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Like the sound is overflowing with energy.
It is, and that gets to the meaning. Ebullient is like someone bursting with enthusiasm.
Oh, I know the type.
Like that friend who walks into a room and suddenly everyone's happy?
Yes, like
Yeah.
their energy is contagious. And the origin, oh, it gets even more interesting.
Absolutely. It comes from Latin, ebulli, which means to bubble out.
Wow,
It's such a cool visual, right? Like their personality is just fizzing over.
I love that. Our source gives this great example. Imagine like leading a pep rally. You want to be ebullient, all that energy to get the crowd going.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You need that enthusiasm to really get everyone pumped.
So think of a boiling pot of water. All those bubbles bursting, that's your ebullient person.
Speaking of energy, let's switch gears to something, well, an expression that's all about facing those tough things head on. Bite the bullet.
You know, it's funny, the phrase itself sounds kind of painful. Who actually wants to bite a bullet?
Right, but that's the point. It means doing something difficult or unpleasant but necessary and doing it without complaining.
Oh, so like ripping off a Band-Aid, just get it over with.
Exactly. And the origin is interesting, a bit gruesome though. Before anesthesia, soldiers would actually bite down on bullets during surgery
Oh, wow.
to help with the pain.
Intense. I can see how that, like, literal act turned into this metaphor, pushing through something tough.
Yeah, it's powerful. And honestly, we all have bite the bullet moments.
Oh, absolutely. Filing taxes, cleaning out the closet, having that awkward conversation you've been avoiding.
Exactly. Facing those challenges, hopefully without the actual bullet biting part.
Yeah, hopefully. Okay, this next one I think we can all relate to. Rack one's brain. Have you ever felt like you're just stretching your mind to the limit to remember something?
Oh, yeah.
Like trying to remember a name and it's on the tip of your tongue, but it just won't come out.
Yeah, that's it. It means putting in intense mental effort to, like, recall a detail or solve a problem.
It's that feeling of your brain working overtime.
Speaking of searching, the phrase connects to a pretty dark image. The torture device, the rack.
Ooh, that is dark.
But you see the connection, right?
Yeah.
It's like putting your brain through that strain, but without the physical pain, of course.
Thank goodness. Our source mentioned searching for lost keys as a classic example.
Oh, we've all been there.
To remember this one, I picture my thoughts being stretched on a rack like it's forcing the answer out.
A great visual. It really captures that feeling of mental strain.
A little dramatic, but it works.
All right, ready for some British slang?
Oh, always. Bring on the Britishisms.
Get ready to giggle. We're diving into faff about.
Okay. It does make you smile. What does it mean? Faff about.
Wasting time doing unimportant things when you should be focusing on something else.
Procrastination.
Yeah, but with that, British charm.
So not just laziness, there's a,
Playfulness.
yes, like a delightful inefficiency.
Precisely. It's like that friend who takes forever to get ready because they're faffing about with their outfit.
I know that friend.
It's not malicious, just, charmingly unproductive.
I love that, like a whimsical dance with a distraction, almost. Even though we're not totally sure where faff about comes from, some think it might be from 17th century dialects. The idea like fluttering about, fussing without really accomplishing much.
That's a great point, and it highlights how even slang can have these historical connections. Fascinating.
It is. To remember faff about, I'm going to picture someone fluttering around like a distracted bird, flitting from one thing to another.
A perfect image. It really captures the essence of faffing about perfectly.
So we've gone from bubbling enthusiasm to British time wasting.
And what's cool is these phrases aren't just about communicating. They help us understand culture, history, how all that shapes the English language. It's like each word has a story, a little piece of the past and how we speak today.
Absolutely. Speaking of stories, I think we have time for one more expression.
Sounds good to me. Let's see. This next one is a real gem. Salad days.
Salad days. Okay, that's new to me. What does it mean?
It refers to a period of, like, youthful innocence, inexperience, carefree joy.
Oh, so like before adulting really kicks in, when life is a bit more...
Light and refreshing, like
Yeah.
a salad.
Exactly.
And the imagery of salad is deliberate. Salads are often associated with freshness, lightness, vibrancy qualities that are often attributed to youth.
I love that connection. It makes the phrase so vivid. But where did it come from? It seems a bit Shakespearean.
You're not far off. Shakespeare actually used it in Antony and Cleopatra. Cleopatra, talking about her younger years, says, "My salad days when I was green in judgment, cold in blood."
Wow. So it has serious literary clout. Amazing to think we're still using something Shakespeare said centuries ago.
Really shows the power of language. And while Cleopatra's quote might be a bit melancholy, the phrase today has a more nostalgic, positive feeling.
So when we say salad days now, we're not talking about being green in judgment, but reminiscing about those carefree times.
Exactly. It evokes youthful energy, optimism, and maybe a touch of naivety.
Okay, I'm adding salad days to my vocabulary list. Such a unique expression.
Now, before we move on, any thoughts or questions?
It strikes me how much history, how much culture is packed into these simple words and phrases. Like we're cracking a code, revealing hidden meanings with each expression.
That's a great way to put it. Speaking of codes, let's dive back into our source material and see what other linguistic treasures we can uncover.
It's funny. We use these expressions without thinking where they come from. Like Hobson's choice. Ever heard that one?
Oh, Hobson's choice. That's a classic. It's when you have a choice, but really only one option.
Ah, the illusion of choice.
Yeah. Like you can have any ice cream you want as long as it's vanilla.
Oh, been there.
Yeah.
So you're steered to a specific outcome.
Exactly. And the story behind it, it's pretty interesting. It comes from this guy, Thomas Hobson. He had a livery stable in England way back in the 16th century. He'd rent out horses, but he had this rule. You could only take the horse closest to the door.
No picking your favorite?
Nope. Take it or leave it with Hobson.
Seems like a strange way to run a business.
Right. But he had his reasons. He wanted to make sure all his horses were used equally, prevent customers from always going for the best-looking ones.
Ah, to manage his resources fairly.
Exactly. So even though his customers felt limited, Hobson's system was actually beneficial in the long run.
So Hobson's choice isn't about being forced into something bad, but having a limited but fair option.
Yeah. I'm curious, can you think of any Hobson's choice situations in your life?
Let me think. Choosing internet providers sometimes feels like that. There's technically a choice, but often only one provider available.
Perfect example. Or maybe like limited vegan options at a restaurant.
Yes, one dish or nothing. Hobson's choice definitely sums that up, going straight into my mental vocabulary vault.
Speaking of things that are good to have on hand, our next one is baker's dozen. I bet you can guess what this one's about.
Ooh, baker's dozen. Does it involve extra pastries?
You got it. It means getting 13 items instead of 12. A little bonus.
Instead of a dozen donuts, you get 13. Bakers had a good reputation for a reason.
Right, and the history behind it is fascinating. Back in medieval England, bakers had to follow strict rules. If they shortchanged customers, the punishments were harsh.
So to avoid trouble, they'd add an extra loaf to make absolutely sure they weren't underselling.
Exactly. Clever way to protect themselves and keep customers happy.
Win-win. The baker stays out of trouble, the customer gets extra.
It shows how these expressions reflect solutions to problems. And even though we don't buy loaves of bread as often now, baker's dozen still pops up.
Absolutely. Like ordering a dozen roses and getting 13.
Spot on. A delightful bonus. Makes you wonder, what are some other modern-day baker's dozens? Like maybe that extra song on an album or a bonus feature in a software update.
Ooh, I like that. It's a nice reminder that sometimes we get more than we bargained for.
Okay, ready for another expression? This one adds a bit of whimsy. Let's talk about blue moon.
Blue moon. Heard that one, but not sure what it means. Is it about the moon turning blue?
Well, the moon can sometimes look bluish, but blue moon is more about rarity than color. It means something that happens very infrequently. Like seeing something unusual and thinking, wow, that doesn't happen every day.
So not the moon being blue, but how rare an event is. Like I only eat fast food once in a blue moon.
Exactly. And the origin, it's a bit of a puzzle. A few theories, but one connects it to the traditional definition of a blue moon in astronomy.
Oh, tell me more. The astronomy connection to language always fascinates me.
In traditional lunar calendars, a blue moon is the third full moon in a season with 4. Most seasons only have 3, so this fourth one was rare.
Like a bonus full moon messing with the rhythm.
Yeah, and because it was uncommon, it became associated with rarity.
So an unexpected event that kind of disrupts the norm.
Precisely. While the astronomy definition's technical blue moon now just means rare in everyday talk.
Amazing how these expressions can be simple, but have complex origins.
Hmm.
Really makes you appreciate language.
Totally agree. That's why I love exploring them. It's like peeling back layers of history, culture. Speaking of which, time for one more expression.
I'm all ears. What else do you have?
Let's talk about rule of thumb. Might seem strange at first, but the origins are interesting.
Okay, rule of thumb. I gotta admit, I'm a little stumped. Does it actually have to do with, like, using your thumb to measure?
You're closer than you think. Rule of thumb is like a general guideline,
Yeah.
based more on experience than like exact measurements.
So like a common sense approach, passed down, kind of like a stitch in time saves nine, that kind of
Mm.
wisdom.
Yeah, great comparison. And we might not measure with our thumbs now, but the phrase still gets that idea across, a practical guideline.
But where did it come from? It does seem a bit strange, using your thumb to measure.
Well, it's a bit of a mystery, some misconceptions too. You might have heard it came from like a law allowing a man to beat his wife, but only with a stick no thicker than his thumb.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I have heard that. Disturbing. Hope that's not true.
Thankfully, no evidence for that. More likely, it came from tradespeople, They'd use their thumbs to estimate or test things.
Ah, okay, so experience and intuition, not violence.
Exactly. Think of carpenters using their thumb to, like, gauge a board's width or potters testing clay. They had a feel for their work, and their thumbs were like tools for approximation.
So like a shorthand for their expertise.
Mm,
A quick way to assess things based on experience.
precisely. And
Well,
while we might not be, building houses every day, rule of thumb still applies.
like when a recipe says add a pinch of salt to taste.
Perfect example. It's not about exact amounts, but your senses, your experience.
Or how about tipping? There's a general rule, but you adjust based on the service what feels right.
Absolutely. Rule of thumb gives us a starting point, but there's room for judgment.
You know, it's amazing how these expressions, from ebullient to rule of thumb, they all have these stories, deeper meanings. Like each one is a window into the past.
Couldn't agree more. Language is more than just words, right? It's history, culture, experience.
It really is.
Yeah.
And that's what makes exploring language so fascinating. Always something new to discover.
Right. It's like we've unlocked this secret vault of like linguistic treasures. Hope it makes you want to dig deeper, ask questions about the words we use every day. Who knows what you might find?
So, to our listeners, embrace the power of language. Explore it, question it, never stop learning. The more we understand the words we use, the richer our communication becomes.
And remember, language is always changing. So keep your ears open, minds curious, and vocabulary is expanding.
Happy exploring, everyone. And that's a wrap on today's deep dive.